Hey, Black Perspective Beauties. This is your girl Mo, better known as Molin. Thank you so much for joining B Speaks Ish and myself as we have this roundtable discussion on loving while Black, specifically in culturally different relationships. Really take this moment to have your own conversations if you're in a culturally different relationship yourself. We hope you enjoy, and if so, let us know what you think on our Instagram page at Black Perspective.
Love takes off the mask that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. James Baldwin.
Black Perspective.
Are you involved with a cultural other?
Was it for an advantage?
What were the challenges?
Did you find that only love was enough?
Girl meets boy, boy meets girl. They fall in love. Everything's beautiful. And then bang, society, family, children, finances, everything hits. So let's talk about it. In dating, what was your first experience with the thought of dating someone who is culturally different from you?
For me, I don't think I looked at that right away. I think that became an issue later on. So I think initially it's like a lot of butterflies. It's like getting to know this person. Everything is very new.
Yes.
And then later on, you realize when I make a joke or if I say, oh, I remember this, and that, we can't relate on that. You know, that never happened to me. I'm like, what? Seriously? And I'm like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? So just stuff that was very normal for me being Black. He has a different type of Black. So for him, it was just like, no, we never did that.
I know for me, it's going to sound really, really, really silly. So don't judge me, ladies.
No,
I honestly always saw myself either dating someone who was Black or Hispanic. It was never like going to be dating the white guy or anything other than that. Those were like my two choices. And that was almost because back in the day, I felt like Latinx and Black were ultimately the same in a way. Mm-hmm. I remember my sister dating a white guy and then me asking her like, how is it dating a white guy, right? And then she was like, well, they have small penises. So mind you, I'm a teenager and I'm not sexually active. So I don't know why it mattered to me that he had a small penis, but I was like, ew, I'll never date a white guy. I don't know that. Like, I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't sexual at the time, but I was just like, ew, gross. Obviously that's a no. So I have to say my first thought of it was like, absolutely not. Even to the point, like if we played Truth or Dare with the neighborhood kids and the dare was to kiss the white guy, I was like, oh no, I'll pass. What's the other thing?
Right.
I think for me, it was definitely the same, like where it was like, oh, all butterflies. And then once I got into the situation, I was like, wow, there's a lot of red flags here. That's going to work out.
It definitely hits different. So what drew you to going outside your own, like someone that was very similar? Because Bianca, I felt like I could relate when you're talking about like cultural similarities. Living in the mountains for me, I felt very secluded. So I did date someone who might have been someone I wouldn't have gone for had I lived in Florida and there was more diversity, but I went for him because of the cultural similarities. I knew that I could have a pop culture reference and he got it. Someone to sit down and watch the Wayans brothers with or watch Martin and we could laugh and talk about our childhood and how these episodes related to it.
I think it was more natural attraction because it's not, I don't think I sought out somebody who was different from me. I think it was more so, we just related on sense of humor. Like we had a lot of core values that were similar. And so for that reason, I was like, okay, I can give this guy a chance, And then I think later on, things kind of morph and become something different. But initially, definitely, I would say just natural attraction.
For me, I would say it was definitely along the lines of natural attraction too. Like the financial security honestly never came. I don't know what the whole speech is with them having a great credit score, but I didn't see that. the protection ended up showing up, but the financial security, like I didn't have anything else there except for that natural attraction when I first got into the relationship. After I stayed there and I felt, like I said, I mentioned the red flags, I feel like there was a sense of me that got curious about other things. Like after I started noticing things, I was like, dang, what happens when I go to a family reunion? Like I didn't mentally care about this. I didn't think about those side of things. What happens if we do happen to have kids?
I can't even say that it was love at first sight. We honestly grew to like and eventually love each other. We worked at the casino together. We were always in the same section. His views were so different from the other people that were surrounding us because we were in the country. It's a different culture. It really is. So when I felt isolated, he was someone that I could gravitate towards because he grew up in like a predominantly Black neighborhood. So for him, like his views, it was almost like that city-like demeanor, although it's still in the country. We kind of bonded on that. He got the pop culture references without me having to explain. So it was very natural. Someone asked me if I was dating him for protection, and it really threw me off guard because although I lived in a very rural area that's predominantly white, at that point in time, I didn't think that I needed a sense of protection. And she was also someone who was dating interracially. And I think for her, she did see it as a sense of protection. Like, I have this white man and we're in a rural area. At least I'm going to be safe by association type demeanor.
For me, I never experienced that until like I was in the situation. And even then, like where I felt safe, there was also that insecurity that was also added of like, wow, what if he says something really goofy to these people and now they're looking at me crazy?
Yeah.
For me, it was a situation of like, we went on nature trails and stuff. So when I would go out in the woods and then find out that we're on trespassing property was kind of my situation with the whole thing.
Yeah, for me, I would say I definitely see the idea of protection. So I kind of get where that comes from. I don't think I ran into that situation in my relationship. We both were people of color. So like if we was on protected property, we both was gonna be, in trouble.
Yeah, my biggest concern with trouble there was for them to call cops or something and him to start mouthing off, and then I'm like, now what? Like,
right.
I felt safe up until that thought.
Yeah.
Right.
So then in terms of, let's talk about the culture a little bit. Like what sticks out to you guys as far as challenges in understanding each other's culture?
I think we do like kind of grow up with some biases in general. Like I think you do kind of develop those over time. I think you develop them just from your family structure. I think we all kind of have some biases in that regard. I think it's just making sure like, okay, even if you were like cracking a joke or if you were saying something, just being a little bit more mindful now because this might really offend this person. Like stuff that you might have just said jokingly that are stereotypes, you might say and it really offends somebody. So like, I guess stuff like that, it can be more of an issue now when you're in a relationship with somebody who's culturally different. Just like, me being Jamaican, we do have some stereotypes as well. Like for instance, like we would make jokes where he's like, oh, there go your cousin all the time. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like somebody who is presenting as a Caribbean person and he's like, oh, there go your cousin.
Oh, okay.
So,
Because I was like, I don't even know what that means.
So
like Game of Thrones?
So he looks more Indian. He looks more Indian.
Oh.
So if he sees somebody who looks Caribbean, he'll be like, oh, they're your cousin.
Okay.
So like for me, I have a sense of humor that didn't bother me. But for somebody else, that might bother them. They might be like, wow, just because they look like they're from an island, you automatically assume, this type of bias about me, or something like that. But I mean, that's just like, I feel like that's just a very surface level one, but that is one,
100%.
that we ran into.
Because I feel like that's the one that I faced, like being on the opposite side of that. I know all the time I'll be like, that's white people shit. And I have to stop and think like, dang, this person is white. Like, they might say that is white.
Right. I mean, we say that's white people shit all the time.
Yeah,
Or,
or that's
you know
your
what I
white
mean?
side coming out.
Right, just stuff like
Yeah.
that, you know?
When did you realize that your relationship was bigger than just having love?
I don't feel like it took very long into the relationship to realize that. Like I said, once those little flags start popping up, and I'm like, oh wow, there are a lot of things that I should have questioned before I got into this relationship and let love carry me this far. I feel like it was almost instantly.
Because you've said the flags like several times. Let's talk about the flags. So what flags did you
Yeah,
see?
so like those red flags, like being able to make those comments and not having to look around if their whole family's there, or like, because I know my white people shit. When I used to go over to my ex's house and you see the cats are on the counters in the kitchen, straight eating off of people's plates, the dogs are licking people in the mouth, and I'm just sitting here like, I'm not eating dinner here. And like, these are conversations that you can really have with just about anybody, and they get it unless they are part of a different culture. Yeah, like I was not even someone I was dating, but the lady that I was just babysitting for, her cat, like she'll leave meats out on the counter to thaw, okay, whatever. But like once it's most of the way thawed, the cat starts eating through the wrapper and is eating the meat, and she's just like, oh, we'll just let the stovetop cook it off, and that's what we feed in the family anyway. And I'm just sitting here like, no, I got food at my house. I ain't have no food, but I wasn't eating it. My sister Snapchat me from the corner, don't eat that shit. Like, outside of like the food, I would definitely say like the idea of how to react around cops or just in escalated situations as a whole. Like for me, I do hit those points where like things can further escalate, but I know it's not even worth looking like the angry Black woman.
Yeah.
When they're like, no, we're going to keep hyping it up. And I'm like, this isn't the time for you to be a Karen, because that's not good for my self-image.
Yeah.
And they're not getting that just because I'm angry. They should know that I'm angry. And we live in a society where we don't always got to tell the world that we're angry because they already think we are angry.
Yeah.
So that was another one that stood out to me a lot. Because like I said, like hiking, we would definitely end up like on conservation land and not know that we've crossed the property line. So we're on someone's private property. And now these people are confronting us. And like, gratefully for me, it's always been a pretty pleasant situation. But there definitely has been times where like, rather than just being like, oh, sorry, we're going to go, they want to sit here and have a conversation about it because of how we were approached. And I was like, I don't really care how we were approached. I don't feel like getting shot or having any kind of problems. And at the end of the day, they right. I am on their property. Let me see myself off. Like, it's not the end of the world for you to go and make more of a situation out of it. And they don't see it as that.
I would say for me, like in my past relationship, the cultural differences wasn't anything that was a deal breaker for me. But I do know that for me personally, I know that there are certain situations that would warrant a red flag. So I would say like one is identity. That's a big thing. So I want to know like, how do I want my family to be identified? You know what I mean? Like what does my lineage look like? So that would be something, not really a red flag, but maybe something that I would have to overcome if I decided I wanted to date somebody that was outside of my culture or race. Because now it's like, do I feel a sense of loss and identity when I go and date someone else that's not of my culture? So like, I think that would be the biggest red flag for me. It's like, how do I, and that could be a red flag for them as well. Like, how do we get through that? Because now we create this life. How did this child identify? Do they really side with my side of the family or do they side with your side of the family? And honestly, it should be a mix of both, but maybe not all the time that could be achieved. Certain things like that. How do we work through that as a unit? So I think that would be probably my biggest red flag.
Right. Especially without feeling like you're picking a side.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I love that you bring that point because I'm going to be honest. There's sometimes when I'm in public and I see interracial relationships, like say the reverse, Black guy, white woman, that there was a time that I would have this innate negative reaction and I didn't really know why. I had to sit with myself for a while because first thing is like super hypocritical, right? After sitting down and thinking about what was the issue for me? I think for me, when I look at the education of children, it comes through the mother. So for me, I think my natural reaction was, if the mother is anything outside of, is she going to be as open to teaching her children not only what the school system and society and the government already teaches, but also delving into the child's Black culture? Because I know with the women that I met that date interracially, most of the women only parade their side unless there's a benefit with parading the other side. Like in Cherokee, it was like, oh, my child is Native because we get per cap, you know, or my child is Black because there's scholarships that specifically go to Black children. I felt like when I thought of it in that sense, not really as in, hey, I'm not okay with it, but are you open to educating your child on Black history? Because the schools aren't going to do it. The society's not going to do it. So you as an other, it's your responsibility. And I feel as if the mother is of the same race, if she is Black, there's at least a chance. Where I don't always feel like in other circumstances, there's that. I know that the women that I met are not a monolith, like not all women that are others don't indulge. But when you see that that's the common pattern, regardless of if these women know each other or if they don't, it becomes a fear. And I think that was the innate gut reaction to be like,
I feel like I never have bias when I see like mixed race couples. But I do think that it's automatically a stigma. Now, I can't say I've been in situations where I've been out and like you said, it's the reverse where it's a Black guy with a person of a different race and the Black guy looks at you either for confirmation or like acceptance or it's like they're looking for something, right? Some reaction. And I'm just like, live your life, bro. I hope she's a great woman. You know what I mean? Like, so, but for me, it's not bothersome, but you can tell that they do have sometimes that they do have like a guilt or something. It's like something is there. It's some type of guilt or something because now they're looking, because they are looking around. They're looking around and see how people are looking at them.
I felt like that for a long time. I felt a guilt. And it was something that I really had to come to terms with because for me, the guilt was like, I know I love Black people. I want to advocate for Black people. I want to help Black people. However, the other piece of that, the caveat to that is like, when people see me, do they know? Because I'm here with my white man. And so for me, there was this struggle and it really wasn't a thing until after 2020. Then for me, it became a thing. But before then, I never even thought of it. I'm like, well, of course I love Black people. Black people should know because, you know, I'm here, aren't I? Like, I'm Black, aren't I? But I can understand the hesitation because there are people out there that date interracially that they are advocating as if they don't realize that they are Black as well.
And I agree with you, Molly. And I think that's the biggest piece of it all. And it's like, it's your comfort level. And then I guess you being certain in your identity, because at the end of the day, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, it don't matter what anybody else says about your relationship. It don't matter if you get those stares and stuff like that. It's unfortunate, of course. It's unfortunate, but that we live in a really messed up world.
For now, we're going to fix all that. We're going to sprinkle it and it's going to be fixed.
Right.
We working on it, one step at a time.
Right.
In terms of interracial dating and when it comes to children, for me, it's important that they see themselves in their heroes. And it's important to me that my kids also know their history. I know my sons have said a lot in the past that he was very thankful that I was adamant on teaching them Black history because he felt more confident in who he was or who he is because of it. I started it particularly because of where we lived at the time. Like I said, a predominantly white area, but I continued to do it because I noticed, even though I feel as if Floridian schools are better about teaching cultural, like other cultures and talking about Black history and things like that, I still feel like they scratch the surface in terms of, like, when you think of Black history, you think of, the regulars, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, George Carver Washington. Is there anybody else that I miss?
Frederick Douglass. And that's about it. That's all they learn.
Yeah, so that's all they learn.
Usually.
So it's mainly people that have been in oppression. And so for me, it was very important to be like, okay, let me look at inventors. Let me look at athletes, because, kids naturally like athletes, but let me look at celebrities that are positive, but let me also look at, like, scientists, and let me look at trailblazers, like a mathematician, a physicist, things like that. And it's good that those things are introduced, but I wish that Black history wasn't only reduced to slavery. Like, yes, slavery happened. Let's talk about it, but let's not only show Black people in the light of slavery. Like, let's talk about it because of how society is. It's just the sense of, with my daughter being biracial, I don't only show her like Serena Williams, or I don't only show her Michelle Obama. I also show her Zendaya. I also show her Tessa Thompson. I also show her Ruth Negga. Like, I also show her Miss Lee Copeland. Like, I show her other creatives so that she can identify with women that look like her. And the same goes for my son.
Yeah, you mentioned something that your son had said about, like, it bringing that confidence. And I think that's something in interracial relationships, especially when you see it is a Black man with an other as the mother, is like, or on the opposite side, even a Black woman and then it's a white man, you think, like, is he getting that same confidence boost of knowing what it is to be a Black man in America?
Yes.
My nephews are biracial, and that's something that I think about all the time. Like, yes, my sister is a Black woman, but we were also raised by a single parent. So, like, what
also a Black woman.
What sense of being a Black man are they being able to learn in the environment that they are in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In my son's last year of high school, we decided that he was going to move with his stepfather, who is white, but he lived in Atlanta. So a lot of that cultural miss, like JJ, even in Florida, he kind of felt like he didn't fit in, because it's like Childish Gambino says, like, too white for the Black kids, too Black for the white kids. JJ fit in that mold, but then when he went to Atlanta, there were kids that were nerdy, there were kids that were athletic, there were kids that fit every single box. So he was able to not only see himself around the students, but also see himself in the teachers. Like, he said that his Black teacher addressed him as brother. He was like, "Hey, brother." And he said it made him feel different when his teacher addressed him that way. And I feel like those are the things that are important. It's like, even if you're in an interracial relationship, how are you reinforcing that future woman, that future man to become who they're going to be and see themselves in the people that are around them?
I do like that a lot. I think that that's important. I'm not a parent, but I would just say, like, as a person outside looking in, I think parents that are raising biracial children, that's something that they could take away from this, because that might not have been anything that they have thought of. Like, why don't I pick heroes that mirror my child? Like, heroes that they can look up to. I have actually a story where this was way, college days, but I had a manager. She had a son. She was white. Her son was biracial. And her son was asking her questions that she couldn't answer. She had recently divorced her husband, who no longer wanted to be a part of their life at all. So that son was completely cut off from his Black family now, because she didn't feel comfortable. So now he has questions, and I think he was like maybe 11 at the time, but he had questions that she couldn't answer. And she's like, she had brought me in the office, and she was just like, I really don't want to offend you or anything, but you're a woman and then you're Black. So I just have some questions that my son is asking me, and I don't know how to answer them. Like, I don't know what's a good way to answer them. And I just thought that was interesting, because she was like, let me see if I can feel safe with somebody.
Yes.
Yeah. And she cared enough about her kid to be like, maybe they can relate to what he's asking, because I don't know. and I don't know how to help.
There's a lot
So
of respect in that, putting herself in that
Yeah.
uncomfortable situation to be able to reach out for that guidance.
right, yeah. So I think that's important. So she's like, she's like, because like, and at that time they had been recently divorced for like maybe a year. And she's like, he's going into his teenage years, and also, he does not have a black male figure to look up to, and I don't know how to help him through that.
Right.
And I'm like, and I told her, I gave her my advice was, as a man, there are still things that another man could teach him. So there are not things that maybe maybe not a white male could teach him, right? Not right away. He can
Right.
relate and empathize, but maybe he might not be able to explain it exactly the way another black man would. But there is stuff that he can take away from having another male figure in his life. So, you know what I mean? So that was my suggestion to her. Like, still you utilize the men in your life. Like you have uncles, you have cousins, you have your father. They can have those conversations with him. Even though they're not black, they can still relate to him as a man. As a young man going into his teens, yes, there are things that they are going to experience that are the same, if not similar. So yeah, that was my advice to her. But, just stuff like that. It's just like, I think it's cool, as you're raising a kid to like kind of reach out to your village, just people that are around you in your circle.
My ex, he looks at my son as his son, and there are a lot of things that he taught him about like cleanliness and confidence, just confidence in general. So hygiene, confidence, what energy you put out into the world, working hard, and where that will get you. My only concern with JJ's father in that sense was essentially when he's like, well, if you work as hard as you can get whatever you want. And so when he's saying this, in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure I said it to him as well, like, that's great that you say that. However, you are white. And I don't know if those same extensions would be allotted to my son as a black man. That's where the challenge is. It's just like, I don't necessarily want you to say that so much because it's not always true. And
right. Yeah.
On the other side, my dad would say things like, oh, you're Haitian, so no one's going to mess with you. You're not Black American, you're Haitian, so no one's going to mess. On the flip side of that conversation with my father, I was like, you can't tell him that because JJ doesn't have a Haitian accent. And even before he's addressed, they're just going to see his exterior. And they're not going to say, whoa, that kid looks Haitian.
Still would be a thing that they would think about, like, oh, it's a Black person. Like,
yes, that's my only hesitation with that, because you're right. There's so many things, even if the male figure is another that they can teach, but then there's those little nuances that are almost a privilege to another, which may not be a privilege to, for this example, my son. That wraps up part 1 of our episode. Join us next time to continue to peel back the layers of the impact that loving while Black, specifically interracial relationships, can have. Part 2 of our episode will discuss hair care, skin care, boundaries, differing in opinions when it comes to finances, and so much more, and how that can affect the children that are in these relationships. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to hear from you soon. If you're a supporter of Blacktrospective, follow us on Instagram at Blacktrospective. Our episodes are also available on Anchor, Spotify, and Radio Public.
Blacktrospective.
Are you involved with a cultural other?
Was it for an advantage?
What were the challenges?
Did you find that only love was enough?